Hi, welcome back. So we had a look at AGS and I showed you the sort of basic features setting up a room, and now I'll show you how I do a similar thing in Unity. So I've just basically copied and pasted my empty project for PowerQuest, which is what I've called my little system. And I'll open that up. Alright, so I've got this quest editor window, which is the main hub that I have for building adventure game stuff. And this is a bit similar to Adventure Game Studio. You've got characters, inventory items, and rooms, and then you've also got a bunch of GUI items. I've got sort of some default ones in there, like that you just need, like a inventory bar and display box in my template project. So first thing first is, I guess, create a room. So I'll make a new room. I'll call it lab, and when I click create, it's going to create a new scene. Going to create a folder with a room under it called lab, and a prefab for that room as well, and also sprites folder. So basically some sort of template kind of stuff that usually you'd be kind of doing individually, which would be kind of a pain, but it makes it nice and easy doing it this way. So it's all done for you with one button press. So now I've got this room set up called the lab. You have a room for every scene in your game, just like you do in Adventure Game Studio. And there's like a button here to open that scene so you can switch between them easily. And then at the top I've got a tab for the room. And under there's a list of hotspots, currently empty. Same with props and also walkable areas. So I'll start setting up those. But first I'll import some art. The way I get art into Unity, and you can just like drag and drop sprites as PNGs in, or sprite sheets if you want. Like, you can do it however you want in Unity. But the way I do it is I've got a little tool that I use, and I'll open this little tool I use to import the sprites. And so I can just export them from, say, Barney uses Photoshop and I use Sprite, but you can export them all as PNGs. So I have all the different frames set out, all the different kind of layers set out on different frames of an animation basically, and then I can just export that as like a series of PNGs, and then I've got an importer that imports them. So basically this is my room. It's from the Peridium game, and it's got, you know, this dead body here. It's got a door which has an open animation, you can see, and a few little other props like lying around. You have these benches like split out so that your character can walk behind them. So yeah, I'll just save a copy of that as into a folder called export, and this will just save all the different frames as separate PNGs. And then in Unity, I've got this importer script that you specify all the different basically the different animations that you want to get out of this file and the frame numbers. So the first one is just the basic, you know, room background. So I'll just call it room. That's on the first. That's from frame 2 actually. Then I'm just comparing this to what I've got in Sprite. Then I've got the 3 kind of background props. So I'll just call that prop A. Prop B and prop C. And now that that's set up, that like I can reuse this over and over and over. So if I ever want to, if I edit some art in the source file, I can just export it again. I might have added some frames of animation, and I can just like run this script again, and it'll like copy them all and put them in the right animations for me, which is pretty handy. So, but first I've got to set where I actually want to get these animations from, and that would be in this export folder. So I'll just copy and paste that into here. And I want to, so when I hit this, it'll just copy those sprites in. And it'll also set up all this default data in Unity. So basically, this will set up the packing tag, which is the atlas that they're in. Set up they want point filtering. So basically setting up the way the textures work, which is nice. And then I can click create animations, and that's just going to create an animation for each of these elements. So then that's really nice if later on I want to add a frame to, say, the computer and make the little light blinking and stuff. You just have them as animations, even though they start out as being a single frame. So I'll show you this animation tool I've got for, say, the door opening frame. So I've got this, at the moment, just the door goes like that, and that's the opening animation, but I probably want to have a couple of other frames in there. So there's the final open frame, and maybe there's the starting frame. So this Power Anim is a tool I made as well. Just makes it heaps easier to animate 2D sprite things in Unity. The default way is pretty clunky, but it's still using Unity's animation system. So it's really just an editor on top of Unity's basic animation editor. So I can like copy and paste maybe this bulgy frame a few times, so it looks like it's kind of being rattled a bit, and you can kind of set frame timings differently if you want. So maybe it's a bit like that, and that'll look good. And let's see how it looks. Maybe slow the whole thing down. So, and maybe copy and paste these two to make it. So if we zoom in on that, that looks cool. Maybe make these in between frames a bit smaller. Cool. So we've got a starting animation. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now we've got all our art in. Let's set up the room. So these are all called props, and I'll just add them all in order. We've got the room itself. It's not an interactive prop. We've got, what have we got? We've got prop A, B, and C. Prop A. So creating these, oops, that's a hotspot. Creating these props, you just give them a name, and it sort of sets up a bunch of the game object and a bunch of data for you. And you can choose whether you want it to be a clickable thing. So these background props won't be clickable. I'll just add them all. Prop A, prop B, prop C. What else have we got? We've got the computer. We've got the door, which is interactive, so we'll tick that box. We've got a book, which is also interactive. We've got body, which would, I guess, make interactive as well. All right, so if I hit apply to that game object, it'll automatically line up all the animations with the correct props and set them all up. So now our scene appears with all the stuff in it, which is nice. And when I select the prop, on the right over here, under this data drop down, you've got all the sort of settings for that prop, and it's very similar to the way Adventure Game Studio has a bunch of settings. So you've got the display name if you need it, whether it's clickable or visible, basic position stuff, and animation it's going to play, and that's all stuff you can edit in the script just like in Adventure Game Studio. So to set this stuff up, the first thing you want is to set baselines for everything. Again, very similar to Adventure Game Studio, and this just tells the engine like what things to sort in front of other things. So if you want the character to be able to walk around something, you set the baseline of the object so that the character can walk behind and in front of it, and it'll handle sorting. So we'll just drag these roughly where they need to go for these props. Prop C, that one. The computer's over here. The door, the book is probably in front, so it's like that, and the dead body maybe about there. And then we'll also set up for each prop that you can interact with basically the clickable area. So to do that, there's this polygon collider, which is a default Unity thing, and so you just drag the points. So drag these points for the door. That'll do, and you can add it and make it more accurate if you want. Add little points, but that's good enough. Then the book as well. Let's edit that. So one of the things you definitely notice in Unity is there's a lot more stuff. So if you haven't not familiar with Unity, you're like, oh, there's this like confusing hierarchy thing here. There's this project with like millions of folders and all these files. When you click on a prop, you've got the prop component with the data, which is like in AGS, but then you've got all this like, an animator and a sprite animator and a sprite renderer and a polygon, all this like crazy stuff. But the idea is that I can still do whatever I want with that, like I can when I'm making any other game in Unity, but I can also just use my sort of Quest editor thingy and the stuff in the data in the prop component and build stuff like I do in Adventure Game Studio. So it's got a lot of complexity, but then the simple stuff is still just as simple and hopefully not too hard to find because of the editor stuff that I've layered on top. So where we've got the book kind of roughly done. And what else do we need? The body. All right, so let's drag this over here. Good enough. Cool. Yeah, so that's kind of how I do it. And then walkable areas. Again, it's another polygon collider. I've got a little button here so you can just edit it without having to find the object. It's inverted. All right. Sorry. Okay, so this is basically where the character is allowed to walk. So the same pathfinding thing you had in Adventure Game Studio. You can have multiple of these, so you can turn them on and off if the path is changing. All that kind of adventure game stuff. So yeah, kind of just drag it out roughly. You can always, and then you sort of tweak it later to make it smooth and nice. But for this, I'll just roughly do it. Need to go around this thing. And over here, but don't step on this body, that would be rude. All right. Okay, so now the character should be able to, when we add a character, should be able to walk around, except for this bit, which would get stuck on. All right. So another thing I'll show you with the props is these walk to points. So say the door, if I want to be able to make it easy for easy for the player to walk to the door and look at it. So in the script, I just want him to go, like if you click on the door, he'll walk up to it. Then I've got this walk to point and look at point. And Adventure Game Studio has a similar thing. Just means that then I can easily tell the player, walk up to here, look at the door, and say something or make the door play an animation. And so I can set that up for the book as well. So look at the book. Stand there and look at it. And for the body, cool, too easy. After you've got the room, the next thing you need is a player character. So I'll just add one. I'll call it Jim because that's the name of the main character from the game. Let's create that, and again creates a bunch of objects for you, sets it all up. For now, let's we'll get the sprites in for the character. So similar to the way I did the room, I've got a file here which is the source file for the character, and that's got some animations. So there's a walk animation that Barney made. I can show you. Yeah, so there's a walk animation, and a talk animation, and then a couple of idle frames. So there's facing to the right and facing up. So so like again, we'll import these just in one step. Save copy as, just save over this thing, and it'll just stick all the PNGs one after the other, like named after these frames, and then I'll name them correctly in that importer thing. So if we ever need to add frames, we can do that easily. And again, I could just drag and drop all the sprites in to Unity, but then I'd have to set up the settings like the pixels per unit and the filter mode and the packing tag. so that they're like sorted into the right atlas and all the fission and all that stuff. So this ends up being quicker for me, but not for everyone, just for some people really. Everyone probably has their own method of doing this. Okay, so the animations I want is I've got my idle, and I've got a sort of naming convention that I use for this, for the different directions that a character can face. So if it's R at the end of the animation name, then it'll go, okay, this is a right-facing animation. Then left would be L, up and down as well. So we've got a right idle, and we've got an upward-facing idle. That's frame, yeah. And then we've got walk to the right, and we've got a talk to the right. And so then we're going to set up the frame. So the first one starts on frame 1, the up is frame 2, the walk starts on frame 3, the talk starts on frame 7. Cool. And I think then that's all we need. Hit import. It'll tell me if it worked. So yep, we've got a 4-frame walk animation, 7-frame talk animation, looks right. And I'll create the animations. Sweet. And now this one doesn't automatically get set up with the sprite, so I'll set under the character in the sprite component, I'll set the sprite that I want to be the default one that I can tweak in the editor. So my sprite renderer, let's make it the right idle, that one. And then the other thing is I want to set the offset from the center point of the sprite, so I'll just drag that up to about there. Cool. I don't want I've got another polygon collider for this, so I could make this character clickable if I wanted to, but usually I don't like to have the main character clickable because it's kind of annoying when you accidentally click on them when you're really trying to click something that's behind them. So for most adventure games I have the main character not clickable, but I do want it to be visible and movable, so similar data that you have in Adventure Game Studio. I've got inventory, so if I wanted to I could start with an inventory item or whatever inventory items. And yeah, the room he's starting in is the lab, so I'll type that in. And also I'll set his starting position, so I'll make him start over here. So 236, -55. 236, -55. What else? He starts facing to the right. And his walk speed, maybe make that a bit bigger, so make it like 80 and 60 vertically, so it's a bit different. Vertically, a bit faster, left and right. And let's give him a nice text color, maybe a nice blue, like that. Is that a nice blue? Looks good to me. All right. Yeah, so we've got a character, we've got a room. Let's see if we can actually hit play and walk around. See if I've forgotten anything. Yes, I've forgotten something. So I can walk, although he's not playing his animation. Have to sort that out. Yes, so he's not playing his animation because I forgot to make it looping, so I'll just tick the looping box. And same with the talking animation, make that looping. Too easy. And the reason that the camera you couldn't see the character was that I have to set up, basically tell the camera how long the room is, how big it is, so that the camera knows how far it can scroll. And so to do that, click on the room in the editor, and there's got this width thing specified. So I'll just find that in this editor down the bottom, 796 wide. Okay, so 796. Hit play. All right, cool. Now it works. Now one thing you notice is because the character doesn't walk all the way up to the right side of the room, you can't quite see the edge. It's kind of annoying. So for that reason, there's this scroll edge buffer, and that basically means it basically adds a bit to the players to each side of the room, so that when I'm at this point, now it'll scroll right to the edge of the room. And one thing that's nice in Unity is I can edit this stuff in the as I'm testing, so I can really tweak this exactly how I want. and work out, okay, is 200 the right amount? Yeah, it seems about right. But if I wanted to, I could make that like 600, and so, okay, maybe 600 is a bit high. Make that 300 or 400 maybe. No, oh yeah, because that's wider than the actual room. So if I make it 300, then like it'll like not scroll at all, but then as I'm crossing the middle of the room, it'll scroll quite fast. I guess if I make it more than half the width, then it goes a bit crazy. But I think maybe 150 is good. So until here, it doesn't scroll, but. And so yeah, just type that in, 150, hit apply, and that's done. Now, is there anything else I needed to show you? Inventory. So similar to adding a new room, I can add some new inventory items. So maybe I'll make one. I think I had, hold on, let's see what I've got. So I'll just drag the sprites into this one to show you that. So I've got a gun and I've got some research. So I'll just drag them into Unity, create the inventory items. So we've got gun, create, and we've got a book. Create that too. And then let's make it so the character starts with the gun. Okay, so it starts with one gun. Okay. And similar to the room and everything, I tend to have stuff set up as animation, so I'll create the animations for that gun as well, just by going create animation, gun, and let's duplicate that and call it book. And then in my power animation thing, select the book sprite. This one looks good. And select the guns, add the gun animation with the gun sprite. Cool. Alright, so now if I hit play, the character should hopefully start with a gun. Yep, there it is. Gun. I can shoot things. They won't work together though. But yeah, so now I can walk around, I can walk behind stuff. I can move my mouse over the book and it shows, oh yeah, there's a book there. The character, plays his walk animation. There's a body you can walk in front of and behind. But yeah, next video I guess I'll show how the scripting stuff works. So like how, similar to Adventure Game Studio, when you click on something, you can like add a little script pretty easily to make the character do something. Cool, so I'll leave it there and we'll pick it up next time. See ya.